male, actually wrote some constructive criticism for me. But it wasn't until traveling down to a New York comic show that I was able to actually meet some people face to face and show them stuff face to face, and that was really the only way to actually get work. And then it was a 10-page story, and then it was a fill-in issue, and then it was filling in for a couple of issues, and then it was a regular series, and then it was a bigger series, and so on.
For you, it's like totally different road.
Kind of different road. I mean, I still think ultimately the only way to actually get a job is to put your book in the editor's hands. For a cartoonist, I know for an artist it's different. For an artist, they can look at your work from anywhere in the world and say, we want to hire this guy, or we want to hire this gal.
But they also want to see some drive, and they want to know that you can do a whole book.
I actually got my first gig. I got my gig at Vertigo because I self-published a book, and somebody passed the first chapter of it to the chief editor at some point, and she contacted me.
Berger?
Yeah, Karen Berger. Yeah, contacted me and said, would you consider writing this book and have someone else draw it for Vertigo? So it still was a case where I self-published the book. I took it around to shows in person, and it just so happened I didn't realize that one of the people I sold the book to was an assistant editor.
That's exactly what happened to me too.
Yeah.
All successes I feel in my life have come from self-initiated projects.
It's funny though, because when that happened to me, I had been attempting to pitch things over email for a couple of years,
right,
and meeting very little success.
Right. I think it's honestly just start making things
and
start
really changed.
Pardon?
I don't think that's really
No,
changed.
I agree. And honestly, it's the easiest. It's the best time ever, probably, to get your work in front of eyeballs. I mean, it's easier than ever. There's really no excuse to just not be making things.
I was at the Joe Kubert School about 6 months ago. They asked me to come give a talk, and I made a deal. I said, Joe Kubert has to spend 15 minutes with me. And sure, I'll come
in the ring.
Yeah. I'll spend all day there talking if he'll do that. But I remember the class being astonished because the first thing I said to them was, forget about print. And they all looked at me because they're still, they're young, but they're clinging to this, and it's like, yeah, you have to forget everything, about that, because by the time you're up and running, it's going to drop out from underneath you. Everything's more or less the same. The whole process is the same, but yeah, you've got to start thinking about where this is going, as opposed to where it is, and all of the opportunities to display your work now are right in front of you, and
right,
they're cheap and they're free, and it's don't kill yourself trying to get a little black and white book printed these days. Kill yourself to get serious web presence, and then make sure you're infecting all of these editors' offices. You'll save a lot of money, and you'll go further faster.
I want to give the audience a chance if anyone has any questions for the panel.
Will you drop that in for me?
I got no one? Not even Ken?
Come on, Kevin.
I'm just enjoying this.
What Canadian?
Do you guys have any interest in making particularly Canadian work? Just kind of,
I guess that depends on what you mean by Canadian work.
I think you can overanalyze this a little bit. It's sort of, it becomes dogmatic if your thing is I'm gonna make my Canadian book now. I think it's just identity is a little bit more nuanced than that.
Here's the best example on TV. It drives me mental. Tim Hortons commercial. Hey Canada, we're all about hockey and we love winter and we're tough people and we like our coffee this way. And it's like, we just can't stop reminding ourselves we're Canadian. Or it's ridiculous how it's mentioned over and over. Like those Molson Canadian beer commercials telling me what I am and what it is to be a Canadian. It drives you mental after a while.
Honestly, I feel like with those commercials, it becomes, they're really sort of playing on almost a propaganda thing of trying to sell you a product through patriotism, which is really screwed up actually.
Did you watch the Olympic finale?
To me, they're actually talking to Americans. The script writers of those commercials aren't talking to us. We don't need We are described to us. We know we have winter.
I live in Vancouver. I don't have winter.
Well,
We won't hold that against you.
I have a question.
I was just going to say,
Okay, that's okay, sorry.
actually ask your question.
No, go ahead.
I was just going to say, you know, if someone says we're going to sell you a book that's quintessentially Canadian,
Right.
then yeah,
You're
what you end up
total
with is like the I am Canadian aspect.
Right.
It's funny, like, you know, I write this series of books about this like little ghost who just wants to be taken seriously and is frustrated because when she attempts to show her personality off, people write it off as you know, just acting out. And somebody recently said to me, how quintessentially Canadian, right? But that's not my aim. I don't think of it as a Canadian book, so it's just a personality thing.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, no, sorry. I was just thinking the idea of placelessness that you were talking about before. Do you think maybe the idea, aside from the fact of this whole mobile universe, part of the problem with identifying yourself as uniquely Canadian writers is the idea of what is uniquely Canadian and what, like, nationally, like, because that seems to be something that people come up against a lot, especially because of this mobile universe. Because now we have to sit here and redefine ourselves, aside from in literature, aside from in you know, artistic venues at all. So, I mean, do you think that might be a big issue?
Well, we have the luxury of living in a very historically very peaceful and very safe country, so we don't have to develop a strident nationalism, right? So yeah, our nationalism is rather subdued. So when somebody asks you to be nationalistically Canadian, it's hard to do it without sounding forced.
After living in the States for 6 years now, you see that actually is quintessentially Canadian and a huge benefit and a huge that should be the point of pride almost, is like, what is it, like peace and good government or whatever the motto is. Like, that is actually an achievement.
Gentle silence.
Right.
And a unicorn.
Unicorns and beavers. Pelts.
I was in America during 9/11. I was in Los Angeles when that happened. And I remember that night I went out with 5 or 6 American guys I worked with. And another guy, I'll leave him nameless for his own sake, he said, I hear there's these people in Afghanistan. He said, you know, we ought to just nuke them. I looked at him, I said, okay, here's the rules. Tell me where Afghanistan is, and I'll let you nuke it. And of course he could. What do you mean, where is it? It's over there, you know. Racial slur, racial slur, racial slur, over there. And I said, no, on a map. What country is it beside? Because if you want to nuke it, you got to know. It's just remarkable, you know. And I think Canadians, you know, we are maybe a little, our education base is a little broader, our sense of the world around us a little sharper. And I think we can help these poor people.
It seems like we have more of a sense of where we are within the world and less of a sense of where.
I don't know about that.
Okay, I'll just leave that one alone. Anyone else? Yep.
Simple question, maybe Steve, I don't know, but do you guys think that Canadians are just sort of intrinsically or inherently or whatever, culturally, less interested in heroes or self-declared or otherwise declared?
I think I can't speak for everybody, but I think it seems typical of many of the Canadian writers I know is that we're more interested in heroism than we are in heroes, if that makes sense.
Sure.
What about Captain Canuck?
Yeah, but that's the hallmark of all good superhero writing. You know, I think it's you know, there are lots of American writers who are writing those characters, and also Canadian writers who are writing those characters. And you know, I'm going to use my favorite example. You know, the most interesting thing about Hellcat is not Hellcat; it's Patsy Walker, and that goes for Batman. The most interesting thing about Batman is Bruce Wayne. You know, so I think, you know, whether that's a national interest of ours or not is largely irrelevant if you're looking at how it plays itself out within, you know, the culture of comic books. There are lots and lots of there's lots of great writing coming from people,